On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, it may not seem like it after a 25-57 season, but a lot of good things happened to the Toronto Raptors this year. We run down the goodest things to happen to the Raptors all season long on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, April the 17th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that stinks, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join, and it's a great little community we got building around the show, full of sickos just like you who cannot stop talking about fake trades, off-season machinations, the play-in games. It's all there for you. Come hang out with us, with our little Locked On Raptors listener family over on the Discord. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts on your audio app of your choosing. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc. etc. You can also join us on YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell, and get a heads up every single time the show is about to go live in video form, so you can see my mug and all that good stuff. Or you get the notification that says, ooh, Sean's doing YouTube right now. Don't go to that website. You might get promoted his face. So either way, it's a useful thing to do. Hit the notification bell over on the YouTube channel. All right, let's get to it. On today's show, we are paying tribute to a recurring segment here on the podcast, and the first of 3 episodes we're going to roll out in the coming days and weeks. Of course, after every Toronto Raptors basketball game, we do the good, the bad, and the a thing we liked, the thing we didn't like, and a thing that has us a wee bit intrigued, a burgeoning trend, if you will, from the most recent Toronto Raptors basketball game. Well, now we're blowing it out. We're doing it full season edition. So today we're going to dive into the good of the 2023-24 Toronto Raptors season. We will do episodes on the bad and the coming up in the next handful of days and weeks. But here to dive into the good is one of our absolute favorites. It's Katie Heindel from Dime and Basketball Feelings. Katie, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good. Doing
That's
well.
great.
Watching the playoffs without any stress.
It is always a nice thing to watch other fan bases just like quake and quiver in the face of stressful basketball while sitting with my feet up on my ottoman in my basketball watching chair. Carefree, not a worry in the world. Some good hoop last night. I mean, the Warriors-Kings game, less good, but the Kings played really well, so that was fun. But yeah, we're not here to talk about play-in teams. We're here to talk about teams that are worse than play-in teams, a.k.a. your Toronto Raptors. Like I said off the top, 25-57, not playing this week or any other weeks remaining in this season's calendar. It might not look like a season that had a whole lot of good stuff to dig into. And look, in fairness, by the end of this episode, we might be scraping the bottom of the barrel, but a lot of good stuff did happen for the Raptors that has importance going forward from this past season. So let's kick it off. Katie, I will give you the floor. What is your number one good thing that happened to the Toronto Raptors this season?
I think my number one good thing is probably the forced independence of Scottie Barnes.
Sure.
I think that extends to his on-court performance before he got hurt, namely when Pascal Siakam or Anunoby are traded away. He is sort of thrown maybe a little bit ahead of the plan into a more independent role, like a more independent leadership role. Darko said in his end of season presser, he talked a little bit about how, they're really still striving to make him the best two-way player he can be. That's the goal with him. And I think inevitably, no matter how good, more skilled and older athletes are around these guys, when you take them and how much younger players like Scottie Barnes obviously learn from somebody like Pascal and OG, when you take them away, it does kind of throw them into the fire a little bit and it necessarily accelerates things. So to that end, until he got hurt, I think we saw a lot of what he was capable of doing, especially when RJ and Emmanuel quickly got here. And I think it like sort of changed the playing style of Scotty and the whole team, much to his benefit. And then I think after he got hurt, and Darko talked about this quite a bit in his end of season, availability, just the growth and confidence that they saw him have as a leader and being really more vocal. It was a kind of a surprise, but not a surprise to hear that there were times when Scotty was maybe coming to Darko and was saying, like, I'm not really sure how to be more vocal or how to, ask things of my teammates that I need to. Not a surprise because we have to remind ourselves of how old he is, and he is a bit more of like I think he's kind of shy, like more soft-spoken.
Sure.
Than some other people on the team. And then is a surprise because obviously he's not that way on the floor. And sometimes it can be hard to parse those two personalities, right? But to hear that he kind of grew leaps and bounds there too, in terms of him even like starting to call coverages and wanting to understand the game from that angle. So that feeds back into the first point of just like how he's going to grow and develop there too. So all in all, like a silver lining, I suppose, to the injury, I think, because he probably did gain a lot of maturation and experience that he wouldn't have otherwise. So, generally to me, that if this is the person the Raptors are pinning the franchise around, then I think that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, for sure. On one hand, there's the shame that he couldn't sort of build on the run he was putting together as the team came together and kind of coalesced into what the vision of what it was going to be. But ultimately, I think, the 20 games you miss out on Scotty Barnes doing the thing down the stretch, there was still a positive element to it of kind of seeing it from the other side. And I don't think it's going to be something that like inhibits his growth or development or his, high end upside or anything going forward. It's a shame. And look, watching those last 22 games, though, Scotty Barnes was a supreme bummer. It was not fun basketball, but that speaks to the importance and the gravitas that Scotty Barnes kind of stepped into this season. And I think the note about forced independence is really like spot on, Katie. Like it's one thing to be a super talented player. It's another thing to kind of understand what rests on your shoulders as the main guy in a franchise. And I think that learning curve was pretty steep over the last couple seasons. We even saw like later in the season, there were moments of like, oh, okay, walking off the court against the Spurs, kind of sulking in the OKC game, not taking shots when they were there for him, etc. But it does seem like those were just points of learning along the way, considering what's happened afterwards. And obviously it has to continue on the upward. But genuinely really encouraged, not just by the on-court strides made by Scotty Barnes, which we've covered at length here, incredible on-court strides. One of the most impressive single-season leaps you'll ever see from a player. And had he played the full 82 games and, put together a run down the stretch like he was putting together after the deadline, I think there's a very real chance he comes away as like the most improved player or on a lot of teams' ballots just because of the surge he was figuring to have going into the end of the season. So you combine that with the maturation, with the understanding of what kind of rests on him. And I think it's only good things for Scotty Barnes this season, even with the disappointing injury that you hope is all good and cleared up and, ready to be moved on from going into the summer. What are your sort of hopes and expectations for Scotty next season? I think it's tough because I think he so far surpassed them this year that there might be this sort of built-in expectation of another jump to be made. That's going to be hard to do. Like the jump he made was already really difficult. Jumping from where he is now to another tier up is really difficult. I think he's got it in him. He's 22. The sort of just the raw counting stats and the graphics of, it's only like him and Jokic and Doncic and LeBron who do these numbers, all very encouraging. But where are you kind of setting the level of expectation for Scotty going into next season, sitting here on April the 17th with plenty of off season left to go?
I think the jump to me will be more consistency than anything else. It won't necessarily be like, he's topping out at this stat, or now he's like really added this kind of shot over here.
Sure.
He was pretty consistent, I'd say, for a few good stretches, but this to me extends beyond just play. It's like when he's asked to have these like tough assignments, again, to go back to something Darko said, he's not going to be like, why? He's going to be like, okay. And, these guys are obviously allowed to have emotional like moments of frustration where, yeah, maybe they need to like walk into the tunnel and then come back, and he's young, but less of those as well.
Sure.
And I think just generally keeping up a jump to me would also be on the leadership sense. It's like not losing a step there when he comes back into the game. This all, of course, hinges on like the moves the team makes in the summer, which we'll get, I'm sure, a couple more hints of today with Masai's end of season availability. But yeah, I think generally consistency is something that I look for. It's something that I can think back on like Pascal's seasons where it's like you of course you want athletes on the team that you root for to take these really astronomical leaps in their skill level. And I'm sure, no doubt, like Scotty will go away this summer and work really hard in various camps and things like that. But to me, it really is just consistency. It's like, is he putting up these numbers night after night? Is he showing up kind of game after game? They're going to lose more. Like, they're not going to come back and just be like a phenomenally winning team. I'm sure they'll win more games, but can he kind of hold it together through the losses as much as the wins? Those are the things I think that it's pretty fair to look for.
100%. I think sustaining what he did this season on its own will be, I think, a pretty impressive thing considering the jump he took. And we've seen in his career, right? Like year one was this incredible thing. Year two felt like a bit of a step back. And then there was the positive step forward. We got to remember that's not all linear, right? It's not always a straight upward trajectory. But yeah, I think all those are well-made points. As far as like on-court stuff for me, I think sort of seeing how he coexists with the other players who are pivotal on the team is going to be huge to sort of, I think the thing for him, his next jump as a player is be the type of guy who makes others better, be the type of guy who sort of amplifies everyone around him. That's what the very best players in the NBA do. And I think, for example, like Emmanuel Quickly, they didn't quite find that connection. They didn't find that chemistry, that sort of symbiosis that I think you'd like to see those two guys have, and that their skill sets suggest they really should have when given some more runway. That to me, more than any, like, oh, he's got to score more or he's got to, rebound more or whatever. No, to me, it's how is he driving positive basketball for everybody? How is he uplifting the players around him to make it more than the sum of its parts type of thing because of his central force as the hub of the team. It's going to be fascinating. But yeah, Scotty Barnes, this is going to be the year where Scotty Barnes took the jump for the rest of time. And that is a pretty cool thing we'll be able to look back on, no doubt. All right, Katie, we're going to come back on the other side. We got more good stuff from this season to run into or run down. We will do that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. You could also check out the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower. That's a lot of horses, up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go and find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's show is also brought to you by my new favorite online game, phone game, app game. It is Monopoly Go. I have told you the tale of my Monopoly story. My wife and my in-laws don't like to play with me because I make it too serious, and fine, whatever. I have that competitive streak in me when I'm playing Monopoly. Typically very not much like a person who wants to own property and be a landlord. But in Monopoly, I sure do. And as a result, my in-laws have said that I can only play Monopoly with them every February 29th. It's a once every 4-year thing. We're on an Olympic cycle for our Monopoly games. but that's okay because Monopoly Go is there for all of the years in between our family games of Monopoly. And yeah, it's a super fun way to play the classic board game. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. Now you can also rob their vaults of riches for yourself. That's sweet. And the leaderboards show you who has the biggest Monopoly tycoon in the land. But it's not just your competitive side that'll love it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get into the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Back at it here with Katie Heindel of Dime and Basketball Feelings. Katie, let's continue running through the good from 2023-24. I think we started off with Scotty Barnes as your good, so I will pitch my first good thing from the year, and that is the OG Anunoby trade worked out pretty damn well, huh? I don't like the way they got to it necessarily. I think the entire handling of the first half of this season was pretty farcical, with the gigantic cloud of uncertainty and the telegraphing of moves to be made that were not yet made and all of that. But man, oh man, did the Toronto Raptors ever change the fortunes of their franchise by flipping OG Anunoby for Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. We shouldn't forget about Precious Achiuwa, who had himself a pretty nice run with the Knicks as well. Malachi Flynn, who went on to big and better things with the Pistons after leaving the Knicks. Congrats to him on his 50-burger, etc. But getting Quickley, getting Barrett, figuring out a way to use Barrett in a way that trimmed the fat out of his game and just kind of made him into this like metronomically excellent 22, 6-4 type player who scores every time he gets to the rim, quickly getting the reps as the lead guard and kind of getting to expand and broaden his horizons after being kind of just like a gunner on the Knicks. I mean, a really, really tidy piece of business. And I do think, Katie, there are a lot of teams out there, the Spurs, the Magic, teams on the look for a really good young guard who might be kicking themselves for not jumping at a Quickley trade first. I just like an awesome trade, Katie. It's been a rough couple of years of transactions, but hard to complain about this one, even with OG Anunoby going out the door. We know how bloody impactful that guy is. This team could certainly use that exact player on their roster right now, but you got to give up good to get good. And I think, Katie, there's just very little to complain about with the Quickley Barrett acquisitions and what they mean for this team and the sort of accelerating of the Scotty Barnes timeline that they kind of represent, no?
Yeah, and it was really nice to hear Quickley talk in his end of season presser about that he loves the city and that he says it's not something he throws around, which I thought was really candid and a thoughtful answer. It's the only downside is we didn't get to see that like trio that you mentioned as much. We're going to. But yeah, it's interesting how, I was pretty much against an OG trade. But you can see in the results of it that obviously the team did not get exponentially better. In some ways it got worse. But like how an athlete like Quickley at his timeline and where he is much better suited to the Raptors than where OG Anunoby was. Because you also see that on the flip side of how OG has been able to flourish with the Knicks, because of where they are in their developmental curve. The Raptors took a bunch of steps back, but it's nice to see that Quickley has been able to really flourish in that expanded role. Same with RJ. So I think that was a trade that honestly really did surprise me. I'm not, I'm not too proud to admit, but really happily surprised in it. And by how well those two have, really taken to the city, and like RJ getting to come home and also just to this kind of brand of basketball. And it makes me feel really hopeful that the things are going to be like much more promising in next season.
High-end guard play, Katie. Guards who can pull up from three. Guards who can, break down a defense. Pretty cool. It's been a while.
And I love fast. I do, like, this. I love fast basketball, and Quickley does play that kind of basketball.
Yeah. And I mean, Barrett, like one of, I think, the most impressive things about what he did. I mean, we know what he did in the half court, getting to the rim whenever he wanted, but
Mhm.
absolute bull in transition as well, right? Like just like barreling into guys, scoring at will. And yeah, I mean, look, I think it's too early probably to say like, oh, can a Scotty, IQ, RJ trio lead a high end playoff team or whatever? We're still figuring that out. And we don't need to have answers to that just yet. But I do think the way those three each fit with one another and the sort of complement to their games that they each provide, I think they're in a pretty good spot to build something pretty interesting around those guys. And, you know,
Mhm.
whether that ends up being the core when the next time the Raptors are excellent, we'll see. But I think they're in a pretty good spot. And to turn OG into two, like I think without question, the Raptors were bang on right to value players over picks when trading OG. And, you know, I think they did value that over like in the Pascal talks too, that just didn't quite get what they wanted. But I think it's pretty clear, like get established young players who are good if you can, and you're going to be a lot happier than kind of waiting on prospective picks to turn around. Like Quickly and RJ have like it really sort of accelerated this thing around Scotty, and I think a
Mhm.
very, very important way, which is awesome to see. And those three guys got a lot of runway now, at least 3 years with RJ on his contract. They're going to sign quickly to a new deal. Scotty's going to get an extension. Like these three are going to get time to marinate. And I think that is awesome after years of every single season feeling like the end of some kind of era over the last 4 or 5 years with various guys hitting free agency at inopportune times. What's your next good, Katie?
Yeah, my next good, I mean, it's kind of bouncing off those 3, and I guess it sticks with my original theme of I'm trying to be kinda tempered in my good,
Sure.
but incremental growth, I think, across
Yeah.
the board, at least since maybe since the new year, since the
Sure.
Pascal trade, has been something that's really stood out to me as positive, not just for the new athletes and the young guys, but, you know, we've seen Gary Trent Jr. really take a leap. I was so happy to hear too that, like, he is someone else who seems to have found his voice and
Mhm.
is happy being more of a vocal leader, and has found a comfort there, and, you know, maybe that does speak to just, like, who was around him for previous years' coaching staff as well, and why he did or did not feel like he could speak up or his voice was, you know, gonna be heard in these situations. So generally, like, the behind the scenes growth makes me really happy because it just feels like that locker room is much more fused together. They're
Mhm.
back to trying to build some really good relationships and trust there, which was needed. And I think that's also speaks to something we've talked about before of, like, how have they been able to keep the vibes this high when they're losing this much?
Mhm.
And I think that's a big reason. And then, yeah, on court growth as well, not just like also for Gary Trent Jr., who's been amazing down the
Hmm.
stretch. But I think the little flashes we've seen here because of the usage that, like, you know, real end of the bench players are getting who normally wouldn't be seeing the floor. I don't know what's going to happen for
Mhm.
all of them this summer, but I still think that growth is really worthwhile. And the growth in your starters too. I think of somebody like RJ who's going to go away and play in the Olympics, and that's going to be a really meaningful, you know, he's not new to the Team Canada stage, I should say,
Mhm.
but I think that will be really
The
meaningful for
Olympics are a
him.
whole new deal,
Yeah,
though, right? Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
summer, and then he'll ramp up, get a chance to rest, and then ramp back up again for Raptors training camp, so he's gonna essentially have these, like, 2 training plateaus, I think, in the summer, which is cool. Olynyk will have them too, but, like, he's, you know, if
He's
Olynyk
been
comes
around.
back's better, that's great.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um but generally, yeah, I look at all those things and I feel pretty heartened by them. And I think, you know, you wouldn't get that unless you had such a tumultuous season.
Mhm.
So that is like a bright side I'm choosing to look at.
Yeah, I think, you know, they didn't necessarily have a lot to play for record wise and playoff wise and all of that, but it did feel like everyone was playing for something, like
Mhm.
playing to improve themselves, to better themselves for whatever the next good version of the team's going to be. You know, not everyone had success. Like there are lots of end of bench guys who I don't think we're going to see again, and that's just the kind of reality of the NBA. But the guys who we know are part of the plans going forward, Quickly, Barrett, Grady Dick, like there was like substantial, I mean, you know, in some cases, like kind of miraculous growth over the course of the season when you're talking about Grady Dick from where he was at the start of the year to what he ended up being by the end. I think there's a lot to like here. And, we've talked about it. I think we discussed it on the last episode you were on, the sort of player development train kind of kicking back into gear here. They've had success improving guys over the course of the season. This clearly is a return to the core franchise philosophy that they had under Dwayne Casey, under the early era of Nick Nurse. Obviously, things got away from them in the back part of the Nurse era, and there were lots of reasons for that. But I think they clearly have. I made this point, I think, earlier this week. The stated goal coming into the season was get back to our roots developmentally and culture-wise. They seem to have done that, and that is like a really encouraging thing. And so that probably helps us jump off into some other final rapid-fire goods to close out the show coming up on the other side here, Katie. We'll get to all those to wrap up the show. Just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Closing things down here with Katie Heindel from Diamond Basketball Feelings, talking basketball feelings. I'm feeling very colloquial today, I suppose. It's the basketball feelings.
Nice, thank you.
I don't know, man. I envisioned myself in a Bruce Brown cowboy hat when I said that. God. Locked On Sports Today 24/7. Go check it out. It's our all-day streaming channel on YouTube. We got stuff covering all the big stories in sports, from the play-in games, crossover episodes covering those, to the NHL playoff chase, to MLB, to college, to the NFL draft, all that stuff. It's over there for you. Locked On Sports Today 24/7. Go subscribe. All right, Katie. Let's get this thing back on the rails. More good stuff. Let's just rapid fire. We'll get through as many things as we can here in the last 5-10 minutes or so. What's another good for you from this season, Katie?
I think when I look around the league and see a lot of teams that are either going to be dismantling this summer or really in the process of like making those tough realizations, the Raptors have like kind of come over that hump, and I look at a team like the Warriors, and this isn't to say like, I mean, actually maybe this is a good barometer of people's own fandoms, but to me, it feels better to be on the upswing and where the Raptors are than like a dynasty kind of facing the realization that it's probably over,
Sure.
Which is always
the thief of joy and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's comparison is the thief of joy, but some expectations are important. But like I hear what you're saying. I think to me, they've gotten a lot of the painful things out of the way. Their growth, they understand what they have to do. They're really like a team sort of looking inward on how to do that. And I think a lot of teams around the league, I can think of the Bucks, I can think of like I already said the Warriors, but there's a lot more who are going to be facing some realizations. And that part sucks. And the Raptors are past that part. So.
Yeah, I mean, as much as the way they got to it was infuriating at times and puzzling at times, there's no doubt that, one of the successes of this season is the decks are kind of cleared, right? Like they've kind of streamlined. They've made their decisions as to what the direction is. They've picked that vaunted direction that people were clamoring for them to pick for 18 months or whatever it was. And that's good. That's promising. That is a nice thing to have happened for sure. And I think going into this offseason, it was a bad season. I wish they hadn't like tanked it away. I think that's a miserable way to close out a year and waste a quarter of a season and all of that. There's a lot of reason for optimism that the upward trajectory begins when they roll the ball out next October. And, it's not to say it's all going to be sunshine and roses next season either, because growth comes with lots of pains, as they say. But yeah, I think the cleaning of the slate, the getting over the decision hump, as you laid it out, I think quite eloquently, is a really, really good one for the good from this season. I don't need to go too long on my next good, but like Darko Rajakovic, I think is a good one. I think they've found themselves a really good coach for the modern NBA with modern personalities. Just sort of he just seems to get it when it comes to relationship management. I think obviously still work to be done on the defensive end of things, but the offense looked pretty damn pretty all season long, even with maybe not so talented players running it. I think you bring in your higher end guys and run that stuff over the course of a full season. There are going to be great results there. I think he's shown a capacity for adaptation. He comes into the season, Pascal Siakam is kind of off to the side, and then he realizes, oh, our avenue to points here is Pascal Siakam have ball lots. And hey, it worked out. They ended up kind of sorting out their offense even before the OG trade. They were on the up over the course of December. Yes, their defense fell apart during that stretch as well, but there's a lot to like about Darko on and off the court. And he's just like a really easy guy to root for. The way he champions togetherness, the way he talks about loving his guys. Like, it's just like, yeah, I want a guy like this to succeed. And there's stuff to figure out. Obviously, the real test will come on the court and tactically once this team starts to be more competitive. But that seems to be something that I don't know. He just seems to have a good handle on the job. We never know how someone's going to handle the job when they get in. And to see the way he's, I think really gracefully managed a season full of tumult is a really, really encouraging sign for what lies ahead with Darko at the head of this team. Katie, what's your next good?
Well, Darko was actually going to be it, so
okay.
we can just skip it. But I mean, aside from everything that you said, I think, having a coach who's really curious technically and seems to want to go away this summer and watch as much different kinds of basketball as he can, not just like see what happens in the NBA playoffs, but, catch up on what's happening, in Europe, and just like taking a much broader lens to it is very impressive to me and like, frankly, kind of refreshing. And also, who was able to hold it together and keep morale as high as it was. That's not like we talked about a lot of the guys on the team being a part of that, but like that all does trickle down, I think, from your coaching staff. And that's a real night and day change. And I think it was one that was really needed for the team. So, and frankly, it's just like nice and refreshing to hear someone be so positive and upbeat and like looking forward to how much better they think things will be next year. Especially after the season that he went through. Like, that's very hard. So yeah, to your point, I think the front office really made the right decision. They understood, maybe not like the gauntlet they were about to throw this guy through, but that he could, hold up in it. And I think he's very illuminating in the things that he says. He's super candid, but he also walks that fine line of protecting his players, which I respect.
For sure. The comments about togetherness from like every level of the organization, I think, were really telling and just like a pretty far cry from where things sat a year ago when we were kind of picking up the mess. It's, like a lot of teams that win in the 20s to like devolve into chaos, devolve into my turn, your turn, devolve into I'm trying to go get my next contract and I don't really care about how things happen here. And that just like never happened with this team, despite all that hit them, despite the challenges on the court, which were many. They really kind of kept the sort of day-to-day expectation, the day-to-day sort of general sense of, all right, like we're in this together and we're doing something together and like we're building towards something. That felt like a through line for the entire season. And I think that's a lot easier said than done for a coach to actually achieve that, right? Like we see plenty of guys come in and it just doesn't work. Their voice doesn't have the weight. And I do think Darko really showed something just with the season not falling into total disarray with the season. And, you know, when it did fall into disarray, it had nothing to do with him. It was to do with injury and weird trade decisions. But yeah, I'm very much in on Darko and looking forward to him coaching a team that has all of its healthy players next season. That will be pretty tight. All tight. Also, like a bench and like more than 6 players to throw into a rotation. I'm in for that too. Any last parting goods you want to get out here quick, Katie? It can be as small as a Jemias Ramsey dunk that you want to remember for the rest of time. They can be as grand and large as the stuff we've talked about today. Any last quick parting good shots before we get out of here?
No, it's good to get someone with a sense of style on the team in Bruce Brown. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, Garrett Temple, I think undeniably a good,
Yes,
just like
absolutely.
one of the stars of season ending availability, just unprompted praise for Garrett Temple. Seems like he wants to play again. Bring him back. I am perfectly on board with that. That seems cool to me. Darko talked yesterday about sort of him always backing up what he talks about and preached in practice and stuff when he got on the floor in those, you know, brief moments. And hell, man, he played like pretty good ball when he was out there. Yeah, loving Garrett Temple. Keep him around or keep him on the bench as a coach if he wants to step into that role, whatever. High praise for Garrett Temple. Having vets is cool, as it turns out. Katie, that feels like a good place to leave this off before we start getting into really, really esoteric good stuff. We got to the broad strokes, I think, today. You got anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, I wrote an article about the Celtics and why I don't necessarily
yes num
trust their playoff
formula
wiles. Like trust them holding off to pressures in the playoffs. That's on SB. Celtics fans aren't too happy about it. Look, I'm not
sure
saying they're
just
not
reacting normally.
Very rationally. I'm not saying they're not a good team. In fact, I say several times they are a fantastic, very scary team. But there are the problems that they've had all along haven't really gone away. So
yeah,
I delve into what those are. I would love to be proven wrong. We'll see.
Would you though? Would you love to be proven wrong and have the Boston Celtics win the NBA championship? I don't know if anyone needs that.
We'll see. We'll see. But that's
I hope you're proven exactly right when the Sixers take them down in the first round.
Thank you. That's on SB, and I think every round I'll be contributing something there. So you can read along.
Everyone, check out all of Katie's wonderful work. Go subscribe to Basketball Feelings, the best Substack newsletter this side of. Oh, we can't knock down Raptors in 7 from our pal Vivek Jacob, but you were there first, Katie, so you still have the seniority over Big V. But yeah, Basketball Feelings, it's the absolute best. Go be a paid subscriber. It's fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. That will do it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, Thursday. We're going to be joined by the winner of the Locked On Raptors Fantasy League. We'll probably talk a little about the Masai Ujiri presser as well, but we're going to be joined by a Green Giant from the Locked On Raptors Discord who won the Fantasy League. We're going to talk about his fan origin story. We're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff, and it'll be a lot of fun on tomorrow's show. Friday, we got Richard Stamen of Locked On NBA Big Board coming on to talk about some prospects as well. So the off-season train is gearing up. It's rolling. It's chugging along. Choo-choo. And we will be back again tomorrow to continue that journey. Till then, thank you so much. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc., etc. And we will talk to you on Thursday. Bye-bye.